It was the kind of desert night that swallows sound. No traffic, no crickets, just the low hum of an Arizona summer in late June 2000, the air so dry it seemed to pull the moisture right out of your lungs. At 11:42 p.m., a call came through to the Phoenix Police Department's dispatch. There's a woman lying near the canal off 43rd Avenue. She's not moving. Officer Daniel Ruiz was first on scene. 28, quiet and meticulous. Ruiz had only been on the force for 3 years, but he'd already seen what the desert did to bodies. Still, something about this call felt different. He parked his cruiser near the water's edge, the headlights slicing through the brush. The woman was half submerged, her hair tangled in reeds, one sandal missing. The smell of algae mixed with engine oil from a nearby storm drain. Ruiz crouched beside her and touched her wrist. Nothing. Her skin was cool, pale and freckled under the harsh beam of his flashlight. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, a faint bruise around the neck, ligature marks on the wrists. He radioed in, voice steady but lower than usual. "Dispatch, we've got a 10:54 female, mid-20s near the canal. Looks like homicide." By 12:15 a.m., yellow tape fluttered in the hot wind. Detective Carla Mendez, homicide veteran, stepped out of her unmarked Crown Vic, coffee in hand, silver badge glinting under the halogen lights. She'd seen every kind of cruelty in her 15 years with the department, but what bothered her wasn't always what was done, it was how cleanly it was done. The scene was disturbingly organized. No purse, no phone, no ID. The victim's nails were short, not bitten but neatly trimmed. Whoever did this didn't rush. A crime scene tech called out, "We found drag marks leading from the service road." Mendez followed the flashlight beam. The dirt was disturbed in a narrow trail, like someone had dragged a heavy tarp. Tire tracks ended about 30 feet from the canal. She knelt beside the marks, eyes narrowing. "That's not fresh rubber," she muttered. Whoever dumped her came in earlier, maybe before midnight. The desert had a way of hiding things, but it also had a way of keeping secrets intact. The sand preserved more than most realized. By sunrise, they had an ID. Fingerprint scan from A5S hit a driver's license record. Jessica Monroe, age 25. A barista at a coffee shop downtown, lived alone near Thomas Road. No criminal record. No known enemies. Her mother, Denise, arrived at the morgue later that morning. Her hands trembled as she held Jessica's silver necklace, recovered from the reeds. "She never took this off," she whispered. Mendez had to look away. Back at the precinct, detectives pinned Jessica's photo to the whiteboard, center position. Around it, maps, timelines, photos of tire treads, and a printout from the canal's maintenance. Schedule.timeline reconstruction showed she'd clocked out of work at 9:15 p.m. and told a co-worker she was heading to a nearby convenience store for groceries. Surveillance from the Circle K showed her walking in, smiling, waving at the clerk, buying milk and cereal. Timestamp, 9:27 p.m. At 9:34 p.m., she exited and vanished. The store's exterior camera caught a glimpse of a dark-colored sedan idling near the lot exit. The footage was grainy, early 2000s analog quality, but a faint reflection on the rear fender stood out. A sticker, possibly a company logo. The case consumed the next 3 months. Officers canvassed the area, interviewed friends, ex-co-workers, former boyfriends. Every lead came up cold. One tip mentioned a man named Eric Sloan, a regular at the coffee shop who'd reportedly made Jessica uncomfortable with his late-night visits. Sloan was brought in, questioned, and swabbed for DNA. He denied everything. His samples didn't match the limited biological evidence recovered from under Jessica's fingernails. By October, the case file was 3 inches thick. The evidence box was sealed and logged as unsolved. In December 2000, Detective Mendez submitted the remaining biological trace to the state crime lab for deep testing, but Arizona's forensic unit was already overwhelmed. DNA analysis turnaround time, estimated 9 to 12 months. Then 9/11 happened. Federal resources shifted. By early 2002, Mendez's request was still pending. Years passed. Detectives retired, boxes stacked higher, and Jessica Monroe's name moved lower on the cold case board. In 2010, the Phoenix PD's cold case unit was formed with grant funding. Mendez, now nearing retirement, joined it, partly because of Jessica. When the new DNA technology rollout began, she reopened the evidence box, pulling out a sealed envelope marked Canal Victim, 624-0 fingernail scrapings. She sent it to the newly upgraded state lab for reprocessing. This time they ran it through CODIS, the National DNA Database. Nothing. The lab report came back clean. Partial female DNA profile only. No male contributor detected. It was a crushing blow. The case went back on the shelf. Then came 2020. 2 decades after the murder, a new forensic program launched statewide, integrating genealogical DNA tracing. Private labs like Parabon Nanolabs and Othram began helping departments reanalyze degraded samples. Mendez, now long retired, got a call from Detective Ryan Holt, who'd joined the cold case unit just 6 months earlier. "Carla, I was reading through your old case, the Monroe file. I think we can try again. There's a lab in Virginia doing something new. They can build profiles from trace fragments." Mendez hesitated. "That sample's microscopic." "We tried twice," Holt replied. "Yeah, but now they can grow it digitally. They don't need the whole strand." She gave a slow exhale. "Then let's dig her up one more time." June 2020. The evidence envelope left the Phoenix evidence room by courier, tracked and logged. At Parabon's lab, analysts began extracting micro-DNA fragments from the envelope residue and the fingernail swab. For the first time in 20 years, there was movement, digital threads forming a half-map of ancestry. The partial genetic build suggested a male contributor of Northern European descent, possibly second-generation American, with known relatives in the Midwest. By August, the genealogy tree narrowed to a single surname cluster. Sloan Detective Holt blinked when he read it. "You've got to be kidding me. The same name from 2000, Eric Sloan, the original suspect who'd passed the DNA test. But the new analysis showed something extraordinary. The 2000 test had failed, not because Sloan's DNA wasn't present, but because the technology then couldn't detect low-copy mixtures. Now, it could. Phoenix PD prepared a re-interview. Eric Sloan, now 52, lived in Mesa, worked as a mechanic, married twice, no kids. His record was clean, his house ordinary, but beneath the normalcy was a 20-year secret waiting to surface. When detectives approached his door on September 3rd, 2020, he looked almost relieved to see them. "You're here about Jessica, aren't you?" he said quietly. Holt nodded. "We'd like to ask you some questions." Inside the modest single-story home, the air smelled of motor oil and coffee. Sloan sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, eyes down. "She fought," he said suddenly, before anyone mentioned a word. Holt froze. "What did you just say?" Sloan's voice cracked. "She fought hard." "I didn't mean to." Holt leaned forward. "Eric, we don't have to do this here. Let's go down to the station." Sloan nodded. "I've been waiting 20 years for that." The interview room at Phoenix PD hadn't changed much since the early 2000s. Pale green walls, buzzing fluorescent light, and a metal table that turned every sound into a small explosion. Detective Ryan Holt sat across from Eric Sloan, a man who looked worn more by memory than time. His hands trembled slightly as he set down a styrofoam cup of water. "Eric," Holt began, voice even, "you told me earlier she fought." "What made you say that?" Sloan looked up, his eyes ringed with exhaustion. "Because she did." He swallowed hard. "I've thought about it every day since." The room went still. The recording light blinked red. 2 decades earlier, Sloan had been one of the first suspects. A mechanic who often visited Jessica's coffee shop, he'd admitted to having a small crush, but denied following her. When questioned in 2000, his alibi that he was working late at the garage had checked out. But as technology evolved, so did the story. Holt slid a photo across the table. Jessica Monroe, smiling in her work apron, hair tied back, sunlight across her face. "Tell me about her," he said. Sloan stared at it for a long time. She was nice to everyone. "You know how that can get misunderstood." "By you?" Holt asked. Sloan's voice thinned. "She didn't deserve what happened. I just wanted to talk that night. I thought maybe she'd changed her mind about me. But she got scared when she saw me waiting." "Where?" "Outside the Circle K. She tried to walk past me. I just wanted to apologize. Then she screamed and I panicked." Holt leaned forward. "And?" Sloan's hands balled into fists. "I put my hand on her shoulder. She slapped me. Then she tripped near the curb. "I swear I didn't mean to hurt her." There was a long silence, the kind that fills every corner of the room. Outside the glass, Lieutenant Grayson and the ADA watched. Grayson whispered, "That's not a confession yet." The ADA nodded. "But it's the start of one." Back inside, Holt stayed patient. He let silence do what pressure couldn't. After a minute, Sloane whispered, "She hit the ground. I tried to lift her, but she was bleeding. I panicked, dragged her into my car. I thought I could help." "You drove her to the canal," Holt said, voice neutral. Sloane nodded, tears pooling. "I didn't know what else to do." She was breathing. Then she wasn't. The recorder caught every breath, every word. The next morning, forensic teams executed a search warrant at Sloane's home. Behind the garage, buried under 2 decades of oil stains and gravel, they uncovered a single box labeled 2000 taxes. Inside were folded receipts, old tools, and a cracked silver bracelet engraved with J. Emmett matched Jessica's initials. Even after 20 years, the metal bore faint residue. The crime lab confirmed it, a DNA match to Jessica Monroe. The discovery hit the department like a thunderclap. Reporters began circling. Cold case detectives fielded calls from national outlets, and the public wanted to know, how had this been missed for so long? The answer lay buried in the evolution of technology. In 2000, forensic sequencing could only read fragments if the DNA was pristine. The samples from Jessica's fingernails were contaminated by canal water and bacteria, rendering them nearly useless at the time. But by 2020, labs could reconstruct partial genetic signatures from even decayed cells, filling in missing segments using genealogical inference. Dr. Lena Harmon, lead geneticist at Parabon, explained during a press briefing, "Think of it like a torn photograph. 20 years ago, we had 5 pieces of a 100-piece puzzle. Today, we can predict what the missing 95 look like. It wasn't just science that solved the case. It was persistence. Mendez's meticulous evidence preservation and Holt's willingness to revisit old ground created the bridge across decades." By late September 2020, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office filed charges. Second-degree murder. Jessica Monroe. Case number 2011-72. Sloane's defense claimed accidental death, that he panicked and dumped the body. But prosecutors argued intent, citing the ligature marks and his failure to call for help. Trial preparation began. Every document, every tape, every faded Polaroid from the crime scene resurfaced. Mendez, though retired, was called as a witness. When she walked into the courtroom months later, she carried the same leather notebook she'd used in 2000. Her notes were still legible, crisp handwriting, detailed observations. She became the emotional backbone of the prosecution's timeline. Flashback July 2000. In one of her earliest notes, Mendez had written, "Suspect likely familiar with the area. Tire tracks show return path toward West Canal entrance, not random dumping. Indicates knowledge of terrain." That one line overlooked for years became the key. Sloane's family once owned property near the same canal system. He knew the terrain. He'd fished there as a teenager. The jury didn't need a confession to see pattern. The scene fit. The vehicle fit. The DNA fit. Meanwhile, the Monroe family sat quietly through every hearing. Jessica's mother, Denise, now in her 60s, wore the same silver necklace her daughter had been found with. She told reporters, "I stopped believing in closure a long time ago. I just want truth." It took 21 months from Sloane's arrest to reach trial. Pandemic delays, backlogged courts, procedural motions. But in the spring of 2022, the people of Arizona finally heard the State vs. Eric Sloane. Courtroom. April 2022. Prosecutor: "Mr. Sloane, after Jessica fell, why didn't you call 911? Sloane: "Because I thought I'd be blamed. I was scared." Prosecutor: "You dragged her to a canal. You left her there." Sloane: "I didn't mean for her to die." Prosecutor: "But she did." The jury watched him fold in on himself. His eyes never left the table. After 8 days of testimony and 4 hours of deliberation, the verdict was read: guilty, second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 28 years in state prison. Reporters asked Holt afterward what moment changed the case. He said, "The DNA didn't just prove who, it proved when we stopped looking." It reminded us that science keeps moving, even when people give up. But there was one more piece. During post-conviction evidence review, a new lab report surfaced. The canal sample, retested under improved conditions, revealed a second unknown DNA contributor, female, unidentified. It wasn't Jessica's. That raised a chilling new question. Was she the only victim? Holt reopened the box again. The cold case, once closed, wasn't quite done whispering. The file should have been closed. The ink on Eric Sloane's sentencing papers had barely dried when Detective Ryan Holt found himself staring at a single line buried in the final forensic summary. Sample B. Partial female DNA profile detected. Not matching victim. Unidentified contributor. It wasn't much, just a trace pulled from the canal water on the fabric of Jessica Monroe's shirt. But after 20 years of following ghosts, Holt had learned that the smallest details could open the largest doors. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the report. "If this isn't Jessica," he murmured, "then whose DNA is it?" Phoenix PD's cold case unit had seen hundreds of dead ends, but a secondary unknown female trace found on a confirmed homicide victim's clothing, especially one dumped in a canal, was rare enough to warrant re-examination. Holt submitted the new profile to GED Match, the same genealogical database that had helped locate Sloane. The hit rate was low, but a week later, the system pinged a familial connection. A woman named Diane Holt, no relation, whose grandmother had lived in Maricopa County in the late 1990s. Holt cross-referenced the lineage. The partial match aligned with a missing persons case from 1998, 2 years before Jessica Monroe's murder. The missing woman's name, Angela Kearns. Angela had disappeared in October 1998 after leaving a night shift at a diner on Grand Avenue. Her car was found abandoned 12 miles north of the city limits, engine running, purse on the seat. No body, no witnesses. At the time, police speculated she'd been abducted by a passing trucker. The case had gone cold within a year. Now, more than 2 decades later, Holt held a genetic thread tying her, however faintly, to the same canal system where Jessica's body had been found. He pulled Angela's file from archives. The location of her abandoned car was less than 4 miles from where Sloane had once lived. Holt called Mendez. She was 70 now, long retired, living quietly near Flagstaff. But she answered on the first ring. "Ryan," she said, her voice still sharp. "You sound like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have," Holt replied. "Do you remember Angela Kearns' 1998 disappearance?" There was a pause. "Yeah, blonde, 23 waitress, never found her. We just picked up her DNA on Jessica Monroe's shirt." Mendez didn't speak for a moment. Then she said softly, "That means he did it before. You're looking at a serial offender." It wasn't an easy claim to prove. Eric Sloane had been in custody since 2020 and denied any involvement in Angela's disappearance. When confronted with the new evidence, he initially laughed. "I don't even know who that is," he said. "You can pin every girl in Arizona on me if you want, but that one's not mine." Yet the forensic overlap was impossible to ignore. The canal system connecting both cases ran for 30 miles beneath Phoenix, with multiple access roads, including one less than half a mile from Sloane's old workshop. And then came the kicker. In a 1998 property tax file, Holt discovered Sloane's name listed as a maintenance contractor for the city's drainage system, the very same canals where both women had vanished. He'd known the area better than anyone. By now, media attention had reignited. Local stations ran headlines like, "Convicted killer tied to second Phoenix cold case through DNA." The public, once content with closure, demanded answers. But Holt wasn't satisfied with speculation. He wanted proof. Using new hydrographic imaging, divers returned to the original canal sites in late 2022. They scanned the sediment where Jessica's body had been found, and 3 miles downstream, near an old floodgate, the sonar picked up an anomaly. Under 2 feet of silt, they recovered human remains. Dental records confirmed the identity within days. It was Angela Kearns. The announcement hit the Monroe family differently than it did the public. For them, the case had already taken enough years, enough grief. But for Denise Monroe, Jessica's mother, there was something haunting about Angela's discovery. She attended the press conference silently, holding her daughter's photograph as Holt explained the connection. "I think Jessica led them to her," Denise whispered to reporters afterward. "She was found so the other girl could come home." The line made national headlines the next morning. Forensic Reconstruction Report, November 2022. Victim, Angela Kern's time of death, approx. October 1998 cause, asphyxiation, consistent with manual strangulation location, Phoenix Canal Sector 3 linked evidence, partial DNA match to Eric Sloan, familial proximity 97. But the partial match wasn't enough to charge him again. Sloan's DNA didn't appear directly on Kearns's remains, but trace samples from the rope used matched manufacturing stock from the garage where Sloan had worked in 1998. It was circumstantial, but devastatingly strong. Detective Holt visited Sloan at the Arizona State Prison complex that December. The meeting was voluntary. No lawyers, no cameras. When Holt entered the interview room, Sloan was already waiting, older, thinner, his once grey hair now white. He gave a faint smile. "You found her, didn't you?" Holt said nothing. Sloan continued almost peacefully. "Angela. That was her name, right? I didn't mean to hurt her either." Holt exhaled, slow. "You dumped her too?" Sloan nodded. "It was dark. I told her I could give her a ride home. She said no, then changed her mind when it started raining. She got scared when I locked the doors. Same as Jessica, same fear." "Why the canal?" Sloan looked down. "It's quiet there. Nobody hears you when you're sorry." The confession didn't change his sentence, but it changed the city. Angela Kearns was finally returned to her family after 24 years. The cold case board that had haunted Phoenix PD for decades had one less face. For Mendez, now watching from retirement, it was a strange kind of closure, the reminder that persistence, not luck, solves cases. When reporters called, she said simply, "DNA doesn't forget, people do." In 2023, the Phoenix Police Department launched a new initiative in honor of Jessica and Angela, Project Monroe Kearns, a forensic grant program funding the re-examination of all unsolved homicides between 1980 and 2010. Within 6 months, the program had already reopened 9 other cases and produced 2 new DNA hits. Holt stayed on as lead investigator, but when asked why he never transferred to a larger department, he said, "Because every city has ghosts. And this one's still talking." Epilogue, November 2024. A memorial plaque was placed near the canal's pedestrian bridge. 2 names, 1 inscription. "Justice is a current. It takes time, but it never stops moving." As the sun set, over Phoenix, the sound of running water filled the silence where 2 stories finally met. One of tragedy, one of truth, both carried home by the same river that once kept them hidden.